Let's start with the major review. Obviously, Blast Austin, I think it went pretty well. Been critical of Blast in the past. I thought Paris definitely had its problems, and I, pointed that out at the time. I think Blast have been very, they haven't handled criticism the best in the past. But overall, I have to say, I've got lots of good things to say about Blast Austin. I've had some time now to go away and actually watch some of the VODs, which I always try and do before I do a review of the major, because particularly if you do a no majors club, you're in your own little bubble, and you're not hearing the casts, and you're not watching the desks, and you're not doing this, and you're not doing that. So I've gone away and done that now for all of the playoffs, and I think I'm in a good position to offer some, well-informed critique, and we'll go there. But what will follow is going to be, we're going to talk about some of the dramas that happened and how Blast handled it and put out fires. We're going to talk about the broadcast and what I thought about that overall. And then we're going to talk about the major itself and all of the big important storylines coming out of the major. And then we're going to do the meme review. So there was this. I had to say, when this came out, I was very, very, very apprehensive about even doing the No Majors Club, what that might mean, what Blast's area of focus was. And so, just so people know, there's essentially a few things going on when a major happens. The first is this: anyone who wants to co-stream the major, there are official co-streamers, and you are given access essentially to the live broadcast stream, and you can play that on your stream while you talk over it or show other things over it or whatever. That's in line with the rules. But that means you are in an official working relationship with Blast or whoever is running the major, and the only advantage as I see it is you get to watch the game in real time without a delay, so it can't be spoiled. The other type of co-streamer is you get to watch it via the CSTV, and there was a new thing that was brought in by Blast this time around, which is fair enough, honestly. It's been the rule in the past that you can, well, not a rule, it's been the means in the past that if you want to watch, like, the CSTV, you can put it in line with what the Observer is doing. And so you can move around, you can do your own, or you can watch the official Observer. That didn't happen this time around. I don't know if it's because of the limitations of CSTV, which fucking sucks, or whether it's because Blast insisted. But the bottom line is you didn't have access to that this time around. My suspicion is it's because, well, look, Blast are hiring the Observer to do that observing, and therefore it's their observing, and therefore their observing isn't available free for the people watching the Go TV. Fair enough, by the way. They're paying somebody to do that job. There is no reason why I or anybody else should get that for free, so I don't have an objection to it. But ultimately, if you were watching in the CSTV, it had a 2-minute built-in delay, so you were always behind the curve on the results. But you could at least, just talk over it. There wasn't any commentary interfering with your broadcast or whatever. It's my preferred way of doing it. I wouldn't want to be an official co-streamer for any of these broadcasts because it greatly limits what you can do. Now, that being said, one of the things that I always find staggering about this stupid relationship that Valve has with the organizers of a major is that they pretend that for temporarily, Counter-Strike is the IP of the person running the tournament. What do I mean by that? Well, if for any reason Blast wanted to take down somebody watching GoTV, Valve would pretend they were allowed to DMCA a game that they have no ownership over. And I don't believe that would hold up. That's not what a DMCA is for. I am, if you're not showing anything that's actually live from Blast, if you're just showing something that's in the in-game client, as in an algorithmic interpretation of the video game that is being played at that tournament, then I don't think they have a leg to stand on from a copyright perspective. And yet, Blast did bring in these rules, and it was put out, the Blast Official Community Coverage Guidelines. We called it the 10 Blast Commandments. It was a little bit on the nose. that there was 10 of these. I mean, that was why we started calling it blasphemy. Because, 10 fucking rules that you must obey if you want to do these things. It just did look a little bit stupid. But you can see here, these were the rules. It was all in-game capture of the Blast TV Austin Major. Must be taken from the free-to-access CSTV. This means, blah, blah, it's fine. You may not monetize your coverage or under any circumstances charge others to view any or all Blast TV Austin Major content. This is always a sticking block because they say this, but then they later will always come out and clarify it's not just Blast. This has happened going all the way back to Starladder, that, subs and donations don't count, right? Subs and donations don't count, fair enough. Any inclusion, embedding, contracting of sponsorship and third-party branding on your coverage of the Blast TV Austin Major is explicitly forbidden. Everyone plays along with this. I don't think Blast can tell me, because I'm watching CSTV on my stream, that I have to hide my sponsors that I have a business relationship with and I have a contract with, and they don't, and I don't have a relationship with Blast or Valve. Yet, this is one of the things that they insist they certainly can. No one's tested them, but I think that's highly dubious as well. You do not have the self-implement delays because of the 2-minute delay in CSTV. That's fair enough. You are not permitted to use professional studio-level broadcasting features in your coverage, like replays, highlights, customized HUDs, including player photos or score bars. Additionally, community coverage may not feature a physical, customized studio space and or feature multiple analysts or casters. This entire rule is a fucking mess. It's just a massive mess because none of these things first of all, why wouldn't I be able to include a player photo? Like, why wouldn't I be able to do that? I'm pretty sure I can, and I'm pretty sure Blast don't have the right to tell me not to. Why couldn't I include score bars? There's nothing proprietary about what happens on a server in Counter-Strike. If you get 20 kills, Blast can't lay claim, well, you got 20 kills in our tournament. Only we have the right to ever say that you display 20 kills. If that was the case, how the fuck would HLTV work? And then stuff like this, you may not feature a physical customized studio space. Well, what is that? Is this a studio space? It's a part of my house that I have allocated to be a miniature recording studio for the purposes of streaming. So, technically, and also may not feature multiple analysts or casters. Why? To what capacity? Etc., etc. This entire rule is just a mess. It's completely unenforceable. There are no terms. They haven't even defined any of the terms. They haven't defined what a studio is, etc., etc., which you absolutely would have to do if you wanted to legally enforce these. And it just comes back to this air of, essentially, what Blast is saying, we don't want anybody to do anything during the time of the major, including watch-alongs, that are high enough production value that it might take people away from the main broadcast. Well, that's not how it works, unfortunately. That really isn't. So again, very stupid. It is strictly prohibited to declare, associate with, or issue outward messaging falling outside of esports entertainment, like political, social, economic, environmental, and rights activism during and throughout your Blast TV Austin Major coverage. Again, it's my channel, my opinions. The only TOS I need to adhere to, or anyone else, is Twitch. This is absurd on its face. They can't. Again, I don't have a relationship with Blast. I can say whatever the fuck I want, and I don't need to factor in whether Blast likes it or not. And by the way, we spent the entire event talking about whatever the fuck we wanted. And to Blast's credit, not that it is to their credit, because I don't think they could have done anything anyway, they didn't say anything about it. Nobody tried to shut the channel down. 7. If chat viewer interaction is open and or enabled, it requires that you moderate this. Again, it's my channel. I'll moderate it how I want. Blast don't get a say. It must be made explicitly clear that your community coverage of Blast TV Austin Major, along with any content created by you, belongs solely to you. Well, yeah, indeed it does. And I'm glad you acknowledge this in Rule 8 after telling me what I can and can't do with my content. And does not originate from Blast Valve and other associated entities outside of yourself. Any player, coach, personality is currently banned by Valve may not appear with your coverage or content. That's been a rule that's been there pretty much since, I want to say, Face It London. And then this other stupid one. Titles of any coverage must use and comply with the following naming convention. Again, it's my channel, my coverage. I should be able to call it whatever I want. Hopefully all of this shit is going to get cleared up by Budapest. I can imagine something like the No Majors Club is going to get hit for Budapest, because if you remember when I did that article about the whole Star Ladder, connections between ESL and Nodwin and all of that stuff. There's going to be probably something that's likely to come up around that for the Star Ladder Major. Again, we will wait and see. I don't know if they'll maybe even try and stop me from broadcasting it again. Our intention is to do the No Majors Club for that time period, because it's pretty abundantly clear that I won't be working that event. They've already contacted all of the talent, all of the people have been asking, what's your day rate, etc. And the CEO himself did say I was fucking speculating. He replied to the Substack article himself, so probably not a fan, but we shall see. But ultimately, Valve need to stop letting these tournament operators just put out these really dumb, stupid, completely unenforceable rules that ultimately prevent people who aren't in any way, shape, or form a threat to the main broadcast from simply showing CSTV to their community. There's no way any of this would hold up. There's no way a DMCA would hold up. So I don't understand what we're doing trying to enforce these rules. These rules should only be applicable to these people, the commercial, streaming, and broadcasting people. What I do and what I talk about over CSTV is between me, Twitch, and Valve to a lesser extent. Nobody else. The merch store. The No Majors Club merch is still going to be there for another 4 weeks or so. So if you want to get yourself a No Majors Club t-shirt or a No Majors Club hoodie, make sure you do. Big Gull has been flying off the shelves more than any of the other stuff that we have to offer. The Big Gull t-shirts is by way and above our biggest seller. I've had loads of people DMing me pictures of them in the Big Gull shirts. So maybe next event that I go to, there'll be Big Gull in the stands. So we have just a Richard Lewis logo tee, my head right in the middle of your chest. For some reason you would want that. And the Richard Lewis Reports mugs are back. And those will probably be permanent rather than the short-term stuff, that we're doing with the No Majors Club, etc. Because obviously these are going to be out before the next No Majors Club at Budapest, where we'll probably do another merch run, which will be themed around Hungary, of all things. So, lots of pictures of Orban on to be incorporated, which you can wear with pride, no doubt. Anyway, thanks to everyone that's bought merch, and if you haven't and you want to take advantage of it, please do. And remember, if you're on the Patreon, there is a post with a 10% discount code for Patreon subscribers. But anyway, so we managed to plow through that. Like I say, look, not to criticize them for putting the rules in place, although these were the most egregious example of the rules yet. Blast kind of let it slide, and also when the CSTV was really, really bad right at the start of the major, and we were fucking, trying to figure out what was wrong, Blast were open to having a dialogue. We passed across all of the stuff that we found, all of the logs that we found, and they were able to fix the CSTV, so it got to a point where it wasn't crashing every 15 seconds, but in fact was only crashing every 15 minutes, which is a hell of an improvement, even if CSTV still absolutely sucks. Just another reason, by the way, why it would never, ever, ever come close to challenging the main broadcast. Anyway, we had another little bit of a drama here as well as we went through. There was this was Try, and he was saying, why don't you let me use my flag at the major? First they said it was because of the chair sponsor. Then I said I can leave it on the desk. The reply was just that I couldn't. What is your problem? Hey, we respect the importance of national identity. For the Blast TV Austin Major, we have a general policy of not displaying national flags on broadcast for all teams and players to maintain a consistent tournament focus. This story was then later picked up, of course, by Dust2 US, and you see Try rages at Blast after being asked to take his Argentine flag off the chair. Blast responds, obviously as well, the reason he wanted to show it was because of this stupid fucking Bestia Argentina al Mundial. Just fucking grow up, guys. Like, your dog shit org fucked up visa forms. You didn't get to go to the major. By the way, back to losing to, poor Brazilian teams online again after saying we definitely were the strongest team in the region. Just not true. But Blast said all national flags are prohibited. For Blast TV Austin Major, we have a general policy of not displaying national flags on broadcast for all teams and players to maintain a consistent tournament focus. This is likely due to multiple conflicts going on around the world that Blast would rather not become entangled in, so the policy is arguably quite well advised. Now, obviously, this is a relatively new rule, and by relatively new, I mean the last, few years. Pretty much from the moment the Ukrainian invasion occurred onwards, that's it. We just got to pretend now that certain countries don't exist. And if you're pretending that certain countries don't exist, then you have to pretend all the other countries that are doing fucked up things don't exist. And then once you start ignoring 4 or 5 countries, then you may as well just not show flags. And the whole thing is ridiculous ultimately, because personally, I don't think showing, for instance, a Russian flag is in any way a tacit or explicit endorsement of what the state is doing. I think the whole using a white flag in place of it, or just not referencing that nationality either, is really, really dumb. It doesn't achieve anything. But this is where we've got ourselves to, because obviously some people are going to complain when a flag is shown. So, this is just what we have to do to level it out and normalize it. And so it's really crazy that a game that's always harping on about how global it is and how we can go into all of these places and blah, blah, blah. Now we just can't even acknowledge that part because, Russia bad, Israel bad, whatever it might be. So that's just where we're at. I mean, listen, I'll say this. I understand where Blast are at. You don't want any controversy, and unfortunately players, as we'll get to, are absurd. They're absurd people. They can't read the room, and they will take things like this and go online and blow it up. They're denying me my Argentinian heritage. And it's like, no, we're not letting anyone show a flag. Why do you hate Argentinians? No, we're just not letting anyone show flags. And on it goes. So I think they handled this well. I think moving forward, we're just going to have the rule. No flags. That's just how we're going to have to do things. It's a real fucking shame, but that's where we're at. So, fair enough. Which brings us to the next drama, the next fire that they had to put out. And that was this. And I'm going to have to tiptoe around this because there's a lot going on in the world. That means that this is the one topic that will just melt everyone's brains. Pull out the it didn't happen in a vacuum card, I guess. But this was Stanislaw, obviously playing for Wildcard, and he was putting out his results on Twitter, and he was putting the results out with the hashtag Save Gaza. And then on the official Blast TV broadcast, despite it being explicitly stated in the rules, at the end of the interview, he said, Save Gaza, even though Blast have said, whatever. So you can see the last comment prompted Shushan, who I believe is the brother of one of the players, one of the Israeli players, and he asked, would it be okay if Israel pros wore a Free the Hostages pin? Flames' brother, yes. So, obviously, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. And in fact, everyone would call you a Zionist pig if you did that, right? So, that's where we're at, apparently. Because, again, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Taps the vacuum sign. So, the whole point is, unfortunately, we've decided we went from there's no politics in CS because we're all brothers and sisters together, to let's just not talk about the politics in CS because it's complicated, to actually let's use it to platform 2 particular vectors for certain types of politics to actually, we can't even have adult conversations about politics in this space because people are stupid. So ultimately, this is where we're at. And like, Stan is smart enough to know about this. I'm going to say something probably controversial that he won't like, but I don't really give a fuck. And I'm going to avoid talking about the ins and outs of this. You can subscribe to Belly of the Beast if you want my views. But ultimately, the thing that I found really tedious about what's going on in Gaza is how ultimately even the people that seemingly do believe it's a genocide are quite content to use said genocide simply for clout and attention. And you're not actually doing anything real about it. You know, you're not sending your money to aid groups. You're not volunteering to go and hand out fucking, bags of food or anything else. You're not putting on a bulletproof vest and going to a war zone to help people. What you're doing is slacktivism. You're using a hashtag. And, we've just had this recently with all this nonsense that's going on at the Glastonbury Festival, where quite literally a band I've never heard of is chanting fucking all these, listen, you want to chant Free Palestine? I definitely don't have a problem with that. You think Palestine needs to be freed and liberated from some entity, definitely say about it. Once you start chanting about death to other groups of people, let's say, that's where I've got a bit of a problem. And so we've got this going on in the UK right now, stuff like From the River to the Sea, Globalise the Intifada. These are not just throwaway phrases. These are explicitly calling for the death of Jews in that region. There's no getting away from that. And so all of this is very loaded. But ultimately, I don't think Stan has the wherewithal to tiptoe around this or to look at it from both views. He just knows that what you're supposed to say now, if you're a right-on person and you want fucking lots of public attention and you want to be called on the right side of history without any of the complexities of said history being explored, you just say save Gaza. So he's gone and he's used that hashtag, with all those dead kids, and he's used that hashtag, and yeah, you've got your attention. Well done. You've had your moment. And you can see here when Flames' brother made the point, asking, can we wear a pin that says free the hostages? By the way, why shouldn't you be able to do that? We should all be able to agree the hostages should be freed, right? They were captured by a terrorist organization. They're being held. They're being tortured in some cases. They're probably already dead, and that information is being hidden from their families who are living in grief and torture. It would be a good thing to release the hostages, right? No, you absolutely will not be allowed to say release the hostages. In fact, that is a loaded Zionist phrase. So you definitely can't say that. And then obviously Stan says this, and again, it's just it's just disingenuous. You can tell it's disingenuous. He said, "I'm sorry to have offended you. I don't see the issue with calling for the release of innocent hostages as you're suggesting. All I wanted to do was advocate for peace and basic human rights. The world seems like it's falling apart, so I hope there will be peace soon." Well, how about hashtag world peace? How about that? No, you chose a very specific phrase, and you know why you chose that phrase. And ultimately, that phrase was against the rules. Now, it doesn't make any difference now. Wildcard didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything, that didn't win any, significant amount of prize money or any of that stuff. But what's the penalty for this? There couldn't be a more explicit or egregious violation of the rules. And so again, I want you to imagine, let's say a Russian player got up and made a pro-Putin political statement at an event. Well, what would happen to those individuals? Well, there'd be penalties. They could even be disqualified from the tournament. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility in the current landscape that we exist in. Instead, this was largely ignored, and we had a little brouhaha about it on Twitter. But look, I'm just saying, don't ever let anybody tell you what you can and can't say or what you can and can't believe. And if you truly feel strongly enough about something, then absolutely go for it, no matter what penalties are thrown your way for pursuing that. History is replete with examples of people that wouldn't shut the fuck up about topics they were genuinely passionate about, genuinely cared about. And often, they're the people that move the needle in terms of public discourse. This is not that. This is somebody basically wading into a topic they know very little about, using a hashtag for attention. And if you go look at all of the replies, it's all like, oh, yeah, oh, God, you're doing it. You're saving the world. You're not doing anything, mate, except drawing attention to yourself. And I don't believe this comes from a place of anything other than attention seeking. I try not to ascribe motivations to people, but whenever I see a fucking hashtag like that, I just roll my fucking eyes, frankly. So anyway, nothing came of that. Blast handled it quietly, I suppose. So well done. We can put that aside. We can now talk about another funnier drama, I suppose, would be the way to frame it, because obviously after Paris there was all this trepidation about what would the Blast trophy look like, and they finally revealed it, and here it is, and it was fucking ginormous. It was huge, probably weighed the same as one of Dust's ass cheeks. It's fucking massive, right? And they basically, it's a deconstructed Blast logo, and it had all of these like glittering logos in, and you can see here, this is a different angle, it's intersected, and there it is, So, first of all, compared to the Paris trophy, this is fucking day and night. The Paris trophy remains an abomination. I don't care how many times Blast shows me that video of how really clever it was. That 3D printed fucking bad dragon or whatever the fuck it's called, butt plug fucking trophy, is the worst trophy in the history of the majors, and one of the worst trophies in the history of esports, frankly. So they made this one, and it's better. It weighed 35 kilograms. Apex said he struggled to lift the fucking thing, but it didn't come without its problems. Right out of the gate, you're gonna see where my little hand is. That is Complexity's logo, but that unfortunately isn't Complexity's logo anymore. That's Complexity's old logo. If you remember when Jason bought them back from the group with the Dallas Cowboys funding, that logo went away and he brought back the old swoosh, the old Complexity logo. They've been selling merch with the old Complexity logo for all of this time, and yet Blast used that. They used the fucking old Complexity logo, which, considering Complexity didn't get very far in the tournament, and this is probably the one kind of part of the legacy that shows they were even there to begin with, is pretty poor overall. And it shows that, yes, they made the trophy well in advance, but so far in advance, they weren't able to correct things like that. And then when the Reddit thread came up, and this was just too fucking good, I embrace chaos like this. You can see the major trophy has Bestia's logo in it. So that's how long ago the fucking trophy was made. Bestia's logo was actually still on the fucking trophy after all of that drama about how Bestia weren't going to get to go there. So this was brilliant because it just rubs their fucking face in it. Like, this is what you could have had. No. In just to see ya. Making figs to God, as Dante would say. So yeah, in just to see her indeed. Bestia, the Bestia logo is on the official trophy, even though Bestia didn't even attend the major. So I love that. But all things said, there wasn't really a lot more dramas. We went through all the stupid opinions that came out and flooded the subreddit. But basically, pretty much all of the fires occurred early, and they got put out early and put out well. Blast didn't let these things really, kind of mar the event. And by the time we got through the playoffs were just excellent and really well done. Now, overall, look, we can talk a little bit about the format, I guess, at this point. It's not Blast's fault, but this format sucks ass. I mean, let's just fucking be real about it. This major dragged for me. And it dragged because the first week is garbage. The quality of Counter-Strike was garbage. These teams barely looked like they belonged in Tier 1, let alone at a fucking major. And I understand the thought process in expanding the major. You know, you get more teams in the sticker ecosystem, more teams participating through the major. You're kind of sharing the wealth and giving people more, experience, so they get better moving forward. But ultimately, no. The first stage really felt like... I mean, by the way, back when we used to do the minor major system, I remember watching a lot of the minors, and even the minors, just because of the stakes involved, the minors felt better than this. This first week was just kind of like watching this slow, trudging, inevitable march towards the next stage. You all knew who was going to go through. It just didn't really feel like a major in any way, shape, or form. And as I said, at least the minors, they were a playoff essentially. And so they had a bit of stakes and a bit of excitement. Regional playoffs always do. It's what people love about the MRQs. So, doing it for the majors makes sense. So yeah, that was kind of a bummer. The best of ones, right the way through the tournament, the best of ones have got to go. I just don't understand the justification in MR12 for best of ones. I don't get it. There were some games that were over in 20 minutes, and that represented, your major journey, essentially. One map, one bad map. Think about Vitality. They've gone right the way through in the best of threes and won a major, cemented their era, and yet there's this weird little footnote about how they got smashed by Legacy on Inferno in a best of one. It just doesn't matter, like that result doesn't matter to anybody in any context. It is meaningless, and yet it exists, and it will just go in. So it's in their history now. Many people consider the streak to be broken, and then if you want to talk about Vitality and try and contextualize just how good they are right now, you have to remove that best of one and only talk about best of three. It's just stupid. But nobody considers best of ones to matter in any way, shape, or form. They've just got to go. It's like, listen, as a compromise, if you're going to do best of ones, maybe we do best of ones MR15. I don't like that. I think the format should be uniform across the board. But if you're going to do a best of one, make the best of one MR15 and the best of threes MR12. If you have to. But it's just stupid. Just why do best of ones? There's no reason for them. The scheduling, it doesn't impact anymore because of the MR12s. Just silly. I'm hoping now, with the removal of the MRQ, Valve are going to take a real long, hard look at the major format and make some changes ahead of Budapest. Because the best of ones are just stupid. And a lot of teams had their tournament essentially ruined just because of the best of ones. We all had a good laugh at Falcons. We'll get to that in a moment. We all had a good laugh at Falcons, but ultimately, Falcons' tournament would have probably been very different if they only played best of threes. That's just the reality of it, So, and you shouldn't. The format shouldn't be dictating upsets. The format should be designed to help favorites and better teams. That is what a good format does. So by the time you get to the playoffs, only the best teams are there. Only the people that inarguably deserve it are there at that stage of the competition. So, I think, the format definitely needs changing. That's not unique to Blast, of course. That's a Valve thing. But otherwise, fair enough. We can talk about the broadcast a little bit. So I went away and listened to it. I have to say, there's bits that I liked, bits that I didn't like. And ultimately, I don't want to be too critical of anybody. Because it's not very nice, and obviously I work with a lot of these people. Put it this way, I don't think there was anybody, ultimately, that kind of felt like... There wasn't anybody doing a particular bad job. I'll say this, I definitely feel, in retrospect, the decision to not have Jason and Dinko casting, that's Moses and Dinko casting, kind of was a bad one. And that isn't to insult Anders, because I think Anders should be at the majors, right? But I think ultimately the Anders DDK duo, it was in a weird spot when it got to the major. And it was in a weird spot because Anders had said in that interview, "Oh, me and Dan are going to, it'd be great if me and Dan could be a duo." And then James Bardolph just comes out of the shadows and says, "Actually, me and Dan are going to be a duo moving forward." And based on recent tweets happening in the public arena, and I really wish, and I know it's rich for me to say this, but like, let Zen Richard talk for a moment. I wish we wouldn't litigate these things in public, because I think it makes us all look bad, and we can all basically like just talk about this privately. There's no need for us to be arguing publicly about hiring decisions made in 2018 anymore. We don't need to do that. A lot of mistakes have been made by a lot of people, including myself, down the years, about the way that we've treated each other and the decisions that we've made and all the elbows that we've thrown to try and get to the table, and the way that we've treated colleagues, and the way that we've, aggrandized ourselves and ignored other people's talents and stuff. So personally, I think, I best will in the world. I just don't think Dan was like. This is hard, man. Dan's a nice guy, and I just don't think he was ready, and I don't think the Anders and DDK duo was ready. It just wasn't ready, and I attribute most of that to Dan. He's been away a long time. When Dan came back to casting Counter-Strike, a lot has changed in the 4 years or however much it's been since he's gone. Not just in terms of the game and the meta and the trends and what's happening there. I have no idea how much CS he's followed or whatever. That's all fine. But even in the way that we do commentary, like, the way that we do commentary these days is very, very different to even like 4 or 5 years ago, let alone, 10 years ago. And it's been essentially, if you listen to Harry and Hugo, and you listen to like Scrawny and Launders, and you listen to the way Jason and Dinko are doing it, and and the way that Chad and Alex do it, there's a different form of like, there's a much more collaborative aspect to what's happening live than what it used to be, with more delineated roles. And also as well, just in terms of people wanting to pick up different parts of what's happening in the action at different times. You have to be able to do a bit of everything. People always say like, it's like a total lie. It just shows people don't listen to them. But people always say like, oh, Scrawny does all the play-by-play and all of the hype, and then Launders will come in and then he'll say something. And it's like, that's not what happens. Like, if you listen to their casts, there are times where Launders will pick up play-by-play and go with it. You just have to be able to do both, and you only get better at doing that with reps. And unfortunately, Dan and Anders, they didn't get enough reps in ahead of this major. And personally, I don't think as a duo, if you just said a duo has worked 3 events together, one of which is the major, you would go, well, what were they doing at the major? If I said, oh, one of them's Anders, you go, okay, that makes sense. So who was the partner? Well, it was someone who wasn't in Counter-Strike for 4 years. And look, I want Dan to come back to the space, and it looks like his futures were Bardolph. And, they're a much beloved duo by the community. So maybe moving forward, you will see them at events. But this that was an issue. And I think Blast, I don't know why they put themselves in this corner with how they did it, but I just think, ultimately, they weren't there. They weren't major ready. And that was the only downside, really, from the casting. I think hosting-wise, it was interesting to see Banks in a stage host role, desk host role, as opposed to being a stage host. They did that for the first sessions. I thought, like, look, ultimately, Banks approached being a desk host like he approached it like he was an interviewer, and that makes sense because that's his wheelhouse. That's what he does. He is an interviewer. That's his bread and butter. So obviously that's kind of how he approached it, and it worked along that basis. They weren't like super crazy, super memorable segments, but ultimately for what was happening at that stage, I thought they were pretty good. They were kind of doing this like red zone thing, which I liked. That definitely is something that we should explore more of in Counter-Strike. That was a big plus for me. The stage hosting was a little bit weird. I've said this before. I really like Stunner as the sideline guy. I think that's his strongest role. Trace knows I feel this way. Stage hosting is its very own world, and there were a couple of little bits where Shocks and Stunner, I don't know if they'd like rehearsed a lot or whatever, or had time to. There were a couple of little bits where the repartee between the two didn't quite pop and it didn't quite bounce. It was just a little bit like that. And probably, you know, because Effie's done so fucking many of these things, it might just be Trace. Trace is in that unenviable position where he gets used in a bunch of roles. And so he ends up on the desk, and he ends up being an interviewer, and he ends up on the sidelines, and then he ends up doing a stage, and then he's back on the desk. And so he's very, very versatile, but like this is the area where it's probably the hardest. It's also kind of weird because he's the American guy, so he was like the point of contact for the crowd, right? He's like the local dude. So it wasn't like the best. It wasn't like bad. It was just, you could just knowing from a professional viewpoint, there was just a little bits where you could see it just didn't quite click in the way that they wanted it to, which isn't to say anybody did anything poorly or anything like that. It just kind of felt like they wanted to do these really neat segments, and the problem with that is it has to then work and deliver, and it just didn't quite. So not to be critical of anybody, it's super hard work, very difficult in a live setting. But other than that, I thought there was some incredible casts. I mean, I even messaged Alex after the MIBR. I went back and watched the MIBR Falcons game pretty quickly after it happened, just because I wanted to see what the vibe was like on the cast. That was one of the best casts at the event for obvious reasons. You just get a fucking game like that with all that shit happening, and you know it's gonna deliver. But everyone did fantastic work at this event, and I thought, the only other thing, and you know I'm gonna say this, so sorry. The only other thing I didn't like was the Mahone zone. Thought the Mahone zone was just what it always was, which is he is a guy that works for YouTube but does not work on a live broadcast, unfortunately. And it's not that I don't value the content, I just think it was unbelievably boring and poorly set up and poorly delivered. It just wasn't very polished nor interesting. There's no like pizzazz. Like, there are people that could do that, and it would be really amazing and interesting. You would be compelled to listen to it. Unfortunately, I thought the Mahone Zone was what I expected it to be, which was just really, really bland. And also as well, no matter what anybody says, like any analyst could do that. Any working analyst now could do exactly that segment. It's as simple as that. And probably because of the personalities, there are people that could do it in a way more interesting fashion. So, all right, Mahone, he's got a major and all of that stuff, and that's cool. But like, that wasn't it for me. The only other thing, analysis desk. I guess we can talk a little bit about Dupree. Dupree is still learning the ropes. A major is very tough. He obviously had his retirement speech as well, where he was very emotional. I thought it was cool, by the way, that he was willing to make his retirement part of the broadcast, which is, it takes, put it this way, if you're doing something personal like that and you make it part of the broadcast, I think that's really fucking cool that they did that. And obviously it added to the show and it added to the rest of his death segments. I want Dupree to make it as an analyst, and I want him to, hopefully, now that he's officially retired, consider this moving forward as, his bread and butter, something he's going to do more moving forward. He is probably one of the best partners to Pimp ever since Maniac was no longer in the scene. They obviously play off well with each other. They're both Danes. They both know each other. They've both been competing against each other pretty much since the start of CSGO. And it clicks. It works. They have a lot of good back and forth. Dupree is still obviously learning a little bit about, it's not what you say, it's how you package it. It's a little bit similar to what Yanko went through when he first came on the analysis desk. There are times where he's in too much of a hurry to make his point, might be a little bit fast. There are times when maybe his point is a little bit too long and a little bit verbose. Doesn't need to be. But, you know, that'll come with time and that'll come with reps. But there's definitely times where I think Dupree, he just wants to get it all out. And I don't know if that's because he's worried he won't have the time, or he's worried he's going to forget, or he's a little bit nervous, adrenaline takes over and you start talking quickly. But I think basically once he gets that kind of just serene calm that the best analysts have on the desk, where it's like, I'm going to make my point, it's going to get made, it's not a problem, and I'm going to be able to toss up the next point to my co-analyst. Once he gets there, he's going to be a huge asset for the desk, and he's definitely someone who's got better and progressed each time he's done a show. So I hope to get to work with him one day. Obviously, I've known him a long time, and I'd love to get to work with him and you know, work on a few things and what have you. So anyway, that's it really. That's probably all the little nitpicks, but ultimately, in terms of how the broadcast was done, oh yeah, the desk having the crowd behind it, I did one like that. It was DreamHack London, and arseholes were all holding up signs and doing shit and trying to get in on the broadcast. Yeah, I mean, that's tough when you've got that. Me, I just didn't ignore it. I was like turning around and going, oh, you want to be on the show? And then, you know, once people realize, like, oh shit, like there's a camera pointed at me and I'm interacting with someone live, most people are like, no, actually, I don't really want to do that. Thank you, please go back to ignoring me. So that's tough, but I thought everyone handled it really well. It was super cool at the end of the show. Maui did a sign-off where he turned around and like thanked all of the crowd for being there and said it was the best major he'd been a part of and all of this stuff. And it was really cool. So I like that. Oh yeah, and they did some like chaotic 4-5-man desk out of nowhere for like one segment. Like, don't do that. That can't work. It's hard enough doing a 3 analysts. But yeah, I mean, look, I thought the broadcast was really well done, very well structured. There wasn't a lot of problems. There was some tech pauses in like the first few days. But after that, everything went pretty smoothly. So hats off to Blast from a broadcast perspective. Which now brings us to the games. And I'm not going to talk about every game all in detail. We're just going to talk about the major talking points from each stage. And then we'll get into meme review, which of course is the real reason you're all here and the most important reason to be here. So this is all the way back in stage 1. And ultimately, there's not really a lot to talk about here. Well, there's 2 talking points. First talking point, complexity. Obviously, complexity had a bit of a nightmare. Prior to this, they were hampered by Holzerk not being able to get a visa in time, and it proved fatal because Holzerk is their best player and very impactful. And ultimately, without him, many of us still put complexity down 3-0 at this stage, but we really underestimated how impactful Holzerk was for this team, and unfortunately complexity not making it through to the next stage, it's really bad. And Jason Lake, credit to him because Jason's a trooper. He went to the arena for the playoffs and he was meeting fans and signing things. And he also did a really cool thing where he put out a big long post. I retweeted it, where he was talking about how if you want to resurrect an ACS, this is what you have to do. It starts with supporting these sponsors, and these are the people who have invested. It was really good. And obviously Grim was there as well for the show match. So, I mean, credit, because it would have been the easiest thing to go away and like lick your wounds and not want to talk about it and what have you. The sad reality is, though, complexity, they, thus far, haven't took any Saudi Arabian money. They're not in the World Club Cup stipend program. I don't think Jason is averse to it. I don't think he has any particular political viewpoints on that. So I don't want people to get the wrong end of the stick. I think ultimately it just hasn't clicked, and he is looking for investment. Now, the problem he has by missing out on going to the later stages of the major here is that it does put people off if you go out in the shit tier stage of the competition. And I don't know what happens to Complexity moving forward. Jason had to raise a lot of money to even have the brand back, and it came out of his own pocket. And unfortunately, we're at a point now where I think if Complexity don't get investment soon, maybe 2026 we don't have a Complexity. And I think that would be really, really sad, because it puts Jason in, well, he has to make a real kind of Sophie's choice. It's, do you shutter the organization until you can maybe secure some funding later and retain the brand, but ultimately you've got to let everybody go until you can? Or do you sell the brand? Everyone gets to keep their jobs maybe moving forward. The brand is active, it's out there, but you have nothing to do with it. And unfortunately, Jason's been down that road before with CGS. He sold the Complexity brand to a big entity before, and they controlled it. He did that in exchange so he could be the GM for what was going to be like a 5-year contract. And then 2.5 years in, that shuttered, and they took the brand, and he had to fight through the courts to get it back. I don't know if he'd want to do that again. I don't know if he'd want to sell it. And, having talked to like Jason and people like Hector who sold Optic, they all say the same thing. Like, I should never have sold it. The money kind of wasn't worth it. And I knew I had to spend the money to get it back as soon as I possibly could after a few months of not being in control anymore. So ultimately, I hope that doesn't happen to Complexity, but this was really, really bad coming out of the event. And look, overall, you can see here, I mean, Wildcard, NRG, later on we'll be talking about other organizations. NA Counter-Strike is just absolutely fucking dead, and it's been murdered by members of its own family, essentially. It's almost like a fucking infanticide or something horrible. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, I won't rehash the topic I've fucking brought up billions of times about how the American team owners, not Jason Lake, but all the other guys, essentially just sold NA Counter-Strike out by taking all of the VC money and then not spending it properly, inflating salaries, blah, blah, blah. And they're constantly needing to have people prop them up and bail them out. And it's not to say other things haven't happened to them. ESL taking away their slots and, just other stuff. But every organization that has had tens of millions of dollars to spend on NA Counter-Strike teams has completely shit the bed. They've lied to sponsors. They fucked up deliverables. And you're never getting that money. You're never getting that money back into the scene now. It's dead. And unfortunately, at the same time, when you have an entire talent pool that realizes they can make more money from match fixing than they ever could from being a good, honest player, that is not a good environment. You end up splitting the player base, but with Valorant and Counter-Strike. By the way, match fixing just going on in both of those. It's fucked up. It's really bad. The talent pool is unbelievably bleak, and ultimately as well, I hate to say it, these organizations, they don't practice like European organizations. They don't practice like Asian organizations. They don't practice like South American organizations. For them, it is absolutely abundantly clear this is a hobby, not a way of life, and it really shows in the results. We watched a lot of the NA games, and they were diabolically bad. I mean, they were really poor to a degree where if Steele's point about 2015 Counter-Strike being stronger was just applied to NA, then sure, I might go along with it. Because the games that we watched, things like NRG versus Complexity, at least Complexity had a stand-in that they could blame. But, the level of play is absolutely abhorrent and shocking. And there's just, we're too far gone now. Now, I've seen a lot of people go, oh, it'd be great if we could save NA. I don't think we need to save NA. I think we need to invest in Asia. Let NA go away for however long it's going to be. It'll come back, We've even got UK players fucking lifting trophies in 2025. And our scene was all Source, and it was dead, we went from having one of the best teams at the start of CSGO to just being completely fucking dead, back in that old Mouse Sports lineup. That's just how it is. But it'll come back around in time. You know, the French scene used to dominate. Now it doesn't dominate as much. There's a handful of French players that are good, and one of them, by the way, is one of the old guys from way back in the day. We don't need NA. We just need scenes that have fans that are engaged and energetic and want to spend money and watch the games and support the sponsors. NA might have the biggest marketing budgets, or it used to. Those marketing budgets have been completely destroyed by these organizations. But look, South America, Middle East, Asia, India, all of these territories can create audiences that would eclipse NA anyway. And look, it might be good to go to America from time to time, do an event like this. The crowd was excellent, but ultimately, it doesn't have an endemic scene anymore, and we just have to move on with that. That's that, right? On that note, we're talking about the growth of Asia. Well, you know, congratulations to the two Chinese organizations coming in and actually showing a bit of personality, actually having some players that want to do interviews and want to kind of demystify what goes on in the Chinese space and to create some interesting and exciting moments. You know, if you look, you've got here in Tai Lu, right? Everybody was loving G. He was doing all the interviews. Super cool guy. Very good English. Way better than you would expect. But overall as well, they have an exciting team. You know, players like Jam Young. You know, you want to watch these players and you want to see them develop and you want to watch them play against the best. But, like, you know, having a captain that's able to go out and do these English-speaking interviews and really engage with a new community and also just be endearing and likable. You know, when Tai Lu went out of the tournament, G said, please go and support our brothers in Lin Vision. You know, NA could never, right? Don't think I've ever heard anything like that. So, I thought Tai Lu might do better than what they did. But the Lin Vision guys, with the whole Emilia QAQ and, you know, Call Me Sue, who obviously spent a bit of time in California, it was really cool to see these players, even without, like in Emilia's case, even without the ability to necessarily communicate in a verbose and expanded fashion, right? They basically went out and, like, he went on the Brazilian stream and was giving one-word answers. Shows you how starved of personality we are in Counter-Strike right now. That's immediately made him the most interesting player in the world for 2 weeks. And they played really well. And they made it through to the final stage. And they beat Falcons. You know, it was like a really cool story. This is what I mean. If the Mongols can make it to a major final, only having Mongolian talent to work with, and if the Chinese teams, where, by the way, China hasn't even begun to invest a lot into Counter-Strike right now. There are other more favorable games in that country. But if they can produce teams that are capable of doing good media work, being engaging, winning fans from across the world, and getting to the later stages of a major, I don't want to hear the excuses from NA people anymore. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. All of these organizations are working with far greater handicaps than NA, who've had this. They've had everything their own way since 2015 to about 2019, and you built nothing. You know, so no. I fucking loved the Lin Vision story. I thought it was one of the best things about this major, and the ramifications it has moving forward is really cool, because whatever I might think about certain governments around the world, China being one of those governments that, let's say, I'm not a particular fan of, I really do like China the country, and China the culture, and China the history, and the Chinese people, and it would be really, really good for Counter-Strike if Counter-Strike had a strong Chinese scene. So this was wicked. These were really, really cool stories, both of them. And I hope that it continues, you know, moving forward. And as I said, these weren't flukes. Lin Vision were playing a really interesting style of Counter-Strike. Tai Lu too, to a lesser extent. But Lin Vision was just this more chaotic and explosive, force by, smash mouth Counter-Strike, which is the type of shit that I want to play. So that was really, really cool. Next, I guess, talk about the Falcons thing. Obviously, we did a whole video on Falcons, and we called it like the manifested hate maxing of Falcons. This was, for many people, the moment of the major, which is crazy to think about. People really wanted Falcons to go out of the tournament. There's a very palpable sense that people want Falcons to fail. And why do they want them to fail? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's because their success is predicated on spending money. And remember, they broke up 2 lineups that they don't even have they never had any intention of keeping them. They disrupted 2 lineups just to stay in the top 10 invites. And then now we've got the whole Kyosuke drama. They came into the major knowing that either Magisk or Tezes was going to be cut. It turned out to be Magisk. Magisk played really, really well in the games that they needed to. But their results were just fucking diabolical. You know, they lost the bait. They lost the Lin Vision. They struggled to beat OG. This is when Tezes, by the way, in the interview, Tezes said, I know we're going to go through. This is exactly what happened in PGL Bucharest. We went over to... Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference of caliber in the opponent, by the way, Tezes. And then, obviously, they got knocked out by MIBR, and they got knocked out by MIBR in fucking comedic fashion. I mean, the 3v5 retake, it was quite funny because when I was listening back to the cast, which, again, it's one of Alex and Chad's best from the event. If you haven't listened to it, if you just watched it on the No Majors Club, do go back and watch the cast. It's great because Alex is setting up that it's over. But Alex is kind of like wavering. He doesn't quite believe. And then as he's watching it unfold and m0NESY does that miss, it's like Alex is almost as stunned as Nico in that. And, you know, Chad and Alex chopping it up after that retake round is so good to listen to. And obviously, we all owe a debt to Dust. Dust manifested that result, the result of the major. I think this had to happen because it would have just sucked if Falcons were able to, like, just take, you know, we're buying m0NESY right now, and we're going to go to the playoffs of a major. You know, there has to be more to it. You got to do the work and fucking have the fundamentals right. And Falcons looked like ass in every single game. It wasn't just that they got unlucky because of the best of ones. It wasn't just that, you know, oh, there was a couple of things didn't go their way, and it's MR12. They didn't just have one bad day, although m0NESY was diabolical on day one. They lost all of their games. The games that they lost and they looked bad. The game that they won, they also looked bad, and it was against OG, and they nearly lost that. They could have gone 0-3. It was easily there. It was conceivable. So, whatever. I mean, it was good for the tournament in a way, although I'm sure people will argue with that point because of what the playoffs ended up looking like. For the rest of this stage, not much more to talk about. Definitely got to talk about Liquid. Liquid was a fucking disaster. Why did this happen? Impossible to know. This was a crazy thing to say. They went into a must-win game against Mouse. And this is how I know when there's something not right in Team Liquid. So they painted themselves into this weird corner where they had to like a must-win game against Mouse. They had to win a series.
You were noticing and feeling in the game?
I think the mood is fine in the team. I think as individuals, we're a bit exhausted from our boot camp. Obviously, our own fault. We just need to do our best today.
So, exhausted from the boot camp. A boot camp isn't there to, like... It's not like a fight camp. It's not meant to put you through your paces and test your stamina. It's there to basically... You get your reps in, you try out some strategies, you practice against different teams from different regions that are all coming together in one country at that time, so you get a little bit of experience and, you know, fleshing out your styles. But ultimately, it's so you can execute your game plan and find out what works ahead of the major. You shouldn't be tired. You shouldn't be playing that much that you go to the tournament for reals and it's GG no re. That just shouldn't be happening. So that... Twists, by the way, is one of the most savvy people in media when it comes to doing interviews, etc. He knows when he says we're a bit exhausted from the boot camp. He's like, if you ask me, he's angling for someone to get fired or for something to come from that, for some change to occur as a result of his statement. There is no other reason to say that. Even if you are feeling that, you keep that to yourself, and then you go to your management and you say, guys, we were really tired coming out of the boot camp because we worked too hard and we did this, and this. Something isn't right. He's upset with somebody. There's no other reason to say that. Their campaign was actually disastrous. Battered by Linvision in a best of one. Battered by finalists the Mongols in a best of one. Then this is the best of three, so this is the one that counts. They took a map, and it was really, really good and really, really strong, and then you can make the argument because it was a Mirage decider. They got unlucky. I mean, look, this was, first of all, probably the end of NAF's time with the organization. We'll find out more. I've said that, like, I wouldn't hate if, now that Magisk is on the bench, I wouldn't hate Magisk coming in for NAF. If Liquid are a European team now and the VRS dictates they're a European team, I wouldn't hate it as a like-for-like replacement. NAF this was his worst tournament probably in his career. And even NAF said in the interview afterwards, I don't know if I'm in the team anymore after this. So that was a weird one. Ultimate popped off in the series. I'm not saying Ultimate's a great player or the strongest player or anything like that, but he popped off in the series and still lost, which is never a good feeling. Ultimately, MOUZ limped through, and that was kind of indicative of their time as well in the major. But Liquid just really been poor and flat ever since they kind of put this roster together, and it does feel like, once again, more changes are incoming, and once again, we're going to see, is Joker Steve going to be allowed to rebuild yet another Team Liquid lineup? I mean, I just don't understand it. I think about, like, people like, Henry G got one chance to build a team that never met in person during COVID, and got like 5-6 months in the job and got fired. Some people just get 5 or 6 years of sustained failure, and it's just okay, apparently. So obviously doing something behind the scenes I don't know about, because this is all deemed to be acceptable. I mean, by the way, I was saying similar things in Bucharest. They didn't even win a map. Obviously, that was, I believe that was Shuhei's first tournament. But keep in mind, they've just locked in one of the most highly sought-after IGLs in World Counter-Strike. Liquid have got to hold themselves accountable. There's no way you should be flaming out 0-3 at the major. Just embarrassing, frankly. Next up, G2. Did anyone have high hopes for G2? No, I didn't. I didn't expect them to make playoffs or do anything. Obviously, since then, things have happened where the reports are Hunter's going to take over as IGL, Taz is out. It's G2. I mean, the G2 lineup, you've fumbled, you've let 2 generational talents go. You've got basically, as we'll get to when we do meme review, Heavy God was doing the best he could, but look at this lineup compared to the lineup they used to have, and like whoever comes in there, it's I don't know, dude. It's just really gonna suck. I mean, they're probably gonna drop Snacks as well. Like, they're gonna basically pick up, now that they've brought in Saw, they've got Sun Pius coming in. It's like, ugh, it's just not a good lineup anymore at all. And obviously the replacement for Snacks, we don't know who that's gonna be yet. But it's not going to be a big name. G2 don't buy star players anymore. They're not going to spend money anymore. It's as simple as that. It's just over. So let's get to the actual playoffs. I love the fact Spirit got knocked out. Just great. Fucking hate this team. So glad we didn't have to listen to more fucking shit interviews with this team. And have the community make total fools of themselves by going, no, I think what Donk meant was, I mean, because this happened, of course, while I was at it.
Let's swim.
Right side snipe,
Shift. Molly him.
Alright.
Echo.
No way.
No Molly,
So
блядь,
sorry.
someone. Throw Molly.
I'm doing it.
Is there a burner?
Review this smoke. Review. Keep
There's
out.
jungle.
Two jungle.
Go con. Don't smoke. One up.
One more jungle. One CT.
Go.
Take it.
TT, take it. Red, red.
Dunk, you want up?
I know, I wanna kill myself.
Now, yeah, it's funny, all right? It is funny, haha, right? Like, oh, he's playing with NA people in Face It, it's bad, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just going to say, if you're a pro player and you go into pickup games in things like Face It or whatever it might be, and you criticize other players and flame other players for not being as good as you, a pro player, or in Donk's case, probably the best player in the world right now, you are an arsehole. It's as simple as that. You are a bellend. There's just no redeeming that. And I wouldn't have criticized him a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever it might be. He's 18 now. You're a man, so you're an arsehole. It's as simple as that. And everyone, see, the apologists are out. They're going, oh, he did apologize to the team. Yeah, listen. For those players, it's a really big deal to play with somebody like Donk, and it'll be the only time they probably ever get an opportunity to do. He made that experience miserable, so I don't care if you sign my profile at the end, frankly. And here's the point I'm making. It's not that I care about this behavior, think it's bad, think it should be punished, think it's a drama. I don't give a fuck. But the point is, if Cadian did this, yeah, you know how different it would be. So you, Reddit, play favorites all of the time. You pretend bad behavior is good when it suits you, and good behavior is bad when it suits you. And this kid has fucking told a stadium full of fans that he doesn't care that they cheer for him, even though they've paid like a fucking month's salary to even be there to see him play. He is telling non-pros. By the way, it's like, look, listen, I'm holding it. I need you to smoke it, right? I need you to molly it. Then when the smoke goes down, I need you to instantly throw a nade and break that smoke. These are like protein protocols. It's NA fucking Face It, guys. Like, what do you expect? So if you're a pro player, there are certain things that you then have to start doing with your life. And one of them is you don't go out into a world of amateurs and call them all cunts and assholes and shitters while you're playing with them because you're so above them. Anybody who does that is an arsehole. It is that simple. It's just that simple. By the way, there you go. There's a name for you. Simple. Nobody gave Simple a break back when he was shitting on people. Back when it was toxic Simple, everybody used to flame that guy. Everybody was saying Simple was good. Simple went on to be the fucking best player in the world, right? You didn't give him any fucking special treatment, though, before he was. So, completely ridiculous. So, I was super happy to see Spirit go out. I just find the team inherently unlikable. And also, let's be real, massive underachievers for the roster they've got. It looks like they're finally going to cut Magics. We'll see. And then I guess we can talk a little bit about FaZe. I never want to hear the phrase aura farming ever again. I don't know why anybody wants to talks like this. It's stupid. It's really stupid. How do you farm an aura? What the fuck are you talking about? That's not what an aura is. So anyway, they basically had as good a run as anybody could expect. And it was kind of weird because people got sucked into believing FaZe were better than what they are. And it was like, look, they started out pretty poorly. They lost that best of one to Aurora. They beat Mouse. They beat Legacy. They beat Mongols 2-0. And then because, again, format things, they immediately had to play Mongols in the next best of three, which I don't understand how a format can allow for that. I'm sure someone will explain to me why it was the only possible way that it could be that way. But ultimately, across this, they made it to the playoffs. Everybody before the major was saying FaZe can't make playoffs. And then they made playoffs. And then everyone was like, oh, FaZe are going to win the major. FaZe are going to the finals. And it's like, guys, we can't just adjust our expectations. The reality is as well, Simple was very hit and miss across the games, which I'd expect. He's been out for a while. You can see it took him a while to warm up. Then when he got going, he looked really, really good, like his old self. I mean, even on maps that he didn't have a lot of reps on, like Anubis, he was looking good. He pretty much, I mean, for me, like, he pretty much made this the blowout it was. Like 1.84 doesn't even tell the full story because like the rounds he had on Anubis in that map there were fucking insane. And then it's like, oh, they're replaying Mongols. They've just beaten the Mongols. Simple's looking good. Simple's been getting progressively better. He was terrible in this series. I mean, actually actively bad. The Mirage one, even though he's got a 1.02, some of the decisions he was making were weird. You could see he was visibly nervous. The Simple miss was really funny because I want to see if I can show you. Everybody was losing their mind because no, this couldn't happen. Simple could never miss. First of all, somebody went into the game and brought up this toe shot he did in connector, right? Look at this. Simple toe shot that somehow missed. Don't really know what to say about that other than the fact that I wouldn't want Counter-Strike to be a game where I could AWP somebody in the toe and get a leg shot. That would be unbelievably shit. So, yeah, that's fine. And then there was the one that drove everybody crazy. But here it is.
Good shot from Simple. Are you serious? What is that? You can't do that, Simple. That's not allowed. This is not FPL. This is a major.
So you can see he missed an easy shot down mid, which isn't fully shown here. And then he went for a nose scope, right? And it missed. It just missed. Like somebody even brought up the decal where it went. That was just poor decision making. Like it was just bad. It was just a bad thing to do in that situation. Particularly once you've made that aggressive play and you're stuck at the top of mid. Everybody was going into fucking, he didn't miss, the game's shit, it's sub-tick, it's all of this. It's like, guys, for fuck's sake, the GOAT had a bad game. It's as simple as that. He went for a no-scope while moving. They're erratic. That happens. So, I don't know why Simple kind of lost it here. He's usually so cool, but I think just being in an arena again and having everybody rooting for you, everybody was on FaZe's side, it just seemed to fuck him up. And he said he'll be back, he's had a taste for it, he's gonna work hard. I hope it's all legit. I hope he gets it because he's definitely been cruising and it's sad, 27, you still got some time to do some good things and be useful. You might never be 2021 Simple ever again, but you're still needed within the game. But a lot of people tried to scrub over this, and it was silly. They lost fair and square to a very good team. On that note, the Mongols, we finally had a run for the Mongols where ultimately we had Senzu not be, with the exception of obviously the final, but we had Senzu not be his usual self. Usually Senzu chokes in playoffs. Here, every single game, he was impactful. He had decent score. I mean, when Mongols won that first map in the final, which we all watched in the No Majors Club, and Senzu's dropping a 1.82 against Vitality, there was a second there you thought, holy shit, maybe. But Mongols are so reliant on Senzu not going missing in playoffs, and that's what's happened to them. That's why they haven't had deeper runs or a trophy win yet. But making it to the major final, even though they might not have had the trickiest of runs, they've still had to overcome some good teams to get there. I will add, probably it's fucking a bit embarrassing that Pain was one of those teams, that Pain was ultimately a semi-final. That's kind of crazy to think about. But ultimately, Mongols, I think they've definitely shown some growth and some development. They did really, really well. Didn't drop maps against solid opposition. So fair enough. And then obviously what can be said? Vitality they've done it. They've cemented the era. I actually am of the opinion it would have been an era even if they didn't win the major. Even if they made it to the final and then lost to Mongols, like it would have still been, we would still be in a Vitality era. Their consistency's been insane. They've won every tournament they've entered in 2025. They've done it pretty much like they've won best of fives against solid teams. They've dominated whoever's been number 2. Vitality have dominated them till they're no longer number 2, and then another number 2 has come in, and then they've beat them. The only time they've even looked stretched was Melbourne against Falcons. So, I mean, there's not really anything to add other than Vitality were just worthy winners of the major. It made this fucking season really, really good. And as I've maintained, yes, you can talk about ZywOo and talk about how they signed Rops and what a pairing that's going to be. There's ultimately 2 reasons, I think, why Vitality have been so good. And that is that Mezzy, ever since he came back from paternity leave, has just been sick. Nobody could have legislated for him being so fucking good. And Apex just will always have one of those games. Now, for him, he had it in a fucking final. Apex was the highest rated player on the server, whereas ZywOo went kind of missing and actually had at least one really poor, kind of like substandard map. Apex and Mezzy were the fucking kings of Vitality, and that really shows how stacked the team is overall. People are saying give Xtaz some credit. I mean, everyone does this. When you win, the coach is great. When you lose, the coach is bad. Sure, by all means. But obviously, I think Vitality have just been hands down the best team in CS2, not just this season. And I'm intrigued to see what will happen as we move forward. And that's that. That was pretty much my review of the major. I think overall, where would I put Blastos in? Probably going to put it in it's towards the higher end. Crowd was great. Broadcast was great. Not a lot of problems. Not a lot of tech issues. Not a lot of drama. Really good games by the time it got to the later stages. Playoff bracket was sick. Cool story with the Mongols. Correct winners with Vitality. Simple coming back. What more could you want? It was a veritable feast. No, I'm not going to talk about Mouse. Just deal with it. So yeah, this would probably make like an A tier major if we were doing like a tier list. It wouldn't be S, but it would be a solid A. So yeah, that's that. That was my review.